You got this all set up right here. You're a pro.
I do the live streaming for St. Andrews and Church of the Good Shepherd.
Really?
Yeah.
I'll do this as long as I can. You know what you got to do, Jeremy? You got to do this Citizens Academy shit.
Oh yeah.
People of Earth, we mean you no harm. Come on in, sit down, Jeff. The water is fine. None of us bite.
Hard.
Walking right here, the rest of the debate between John and Tornga.
Welcome to the Candidate Forum for Preserve the Vibe. I'm happy that you could all come here. And, well, I guess that's all I have to say. I'm happy that you could all come here. Our Candidate Forum this evening, or this afternoon, will be held in the following format. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement. The Preserve the Vibe has a handful of questions prepared, and both candidates will respond to each question. If I feel that a follow-up is needed, I will ask for a candidate to follow up, and they will have a minute for that. The other candidate will also have an additional minute. Keep everything balanced, even Steven, because on November 7th, regardless of your point of view on November 5th, on November 7th, we all got to work together and make the city a great place, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Now, I'd like to hear that a little louder. We've all got to make the city a great place, right?
Yay!
All right. People of Earth do well. If you wish to ask the candidates a question, please see Stephanie here, or holler or send up a smoke signal so that she can give you a card to submit your question. Are we ready to rock and roll? Yes? No? Maybe? Are we ready to rock and roll?
Let's rock and roll!
Okay. All right, very good. So, I just realized the thing I'd forgotten was my questions. By the way, are y'all, is everybody getting enough campaign literature in the mail? Does anybody need any extra?
Not enough, not
This
enough.
was just today. I've got a Sally Laufer. I'll trade a Sally Laufer for an Amanda DeSantis or whoever it is. Anyway. All right.
I'll be there, man.
Does anybody have a coin? I need a coin to flip.
That's a New York trick. Who's looking for mine?
Right, no coins. All right. Let me have your Preserve Divide button. Oh, there we go. I just scored a quarter.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Tornga, call it in the air, heads or tails? It is tails. You have the option of going first or second. Which do you prefer?
I will allow John to go first.
Okay, whose quarter is this? Thank you. Okay, here is your first question. Since 2012, there have been 10 commission seats that have gone before the public. Of those 10 commission seats, or those 10 commission races, 5 have gone unopposed. Kind of a dismal 50% for citizen participation. My question to both of you is this: is the role of the citizen legislator who works part or full-time and attends to his government part or full-time, is that no longer applicable in Dunedin? Does Dunedin need full-time commissioners?
Sir, before I say hi to all, are we going to do this format, or are we following another format?
Please have a seat.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. My wife calls me a goofball for a good reason. We have to start with opening statements, and I realized that the moment I stepped off the stage. Thank you for being so gracious. Your opening statement, sir, you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And I apologize if I am trying to get a range of motion here to just get a look at everyone, and then of course the voice will come in and out just a little bit, but I think you can all hear me fine. I'd like to just get a little bit about myself that would relate to the position that I am currently serving in. Following my active service, I achieved and successfully utilized an MBA from Michigan State University, a 2-year program, both in marketing and in finance. At that time, I met my beautiful wife, Deborah, and we went on into the corporate world and had a great time. I worked for a Fortune 100 company, AMF. I started with them first and eventually matriculated through becoming the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Head Ski and Tennis, and then the Vice President of Europe. I've traveled throughout the world for business, both sides of the world. I've lived on both sides of the world. I've lived on both sides of the U.S. and in between in some really beautiful cities, such as San Diego, Boulder, Colorado, Princeton, New Jersey, Fort Lauderdale, and Dunedin, Florida. While here in Dunedin, I've had the opportunity to serve both on boards and committees. I have been your chair of the Board of Finance in the city here as a committee. I have been on your CRA, which is your Community Redevelopment Agency. I was your chairman of your Waterfront Task Force, and as well as other committees. Since being here as a city commissioner on seat 4, I have served on what is called Forward Pinellas, which is your MPO, very complicated. It stands for Metropolitan Planning Organization, as your representative, as well as planning at PPC, which is the Pinellas Planning Committee. And I've served through their organization, both on the Security Task Force for the trail, as well as for the TMA, which is a transportation management area for the entire 3-county area. We have 3 from Palm 3 from Pasco, and 3 in Hillsborough.
15 seconds.
15 seconds. And so I have a great experience, a great wealth, and great contacts, and have really enjoyed serving as a city commissioner, and look forward to communicating more as we get asked questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, you have 3 minutes.
John's a tall drink of water, isn't he? Good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, Harry, members of Preserve the Vibe, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. Just a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Dunedin. I'm extremely passionate. Over here at Meese Hospital, where I was born, Dr. Smith, if anybody had Dr. Smith, we all seem to growing up. Had 2 young girls that I was privileged and blessed to raise in the community. Now, growing up, my entire life has been civic oriented. Just real quickly on my background, I have a grandfather who is a retired firefighter that moved down from Ohio, and he moved to Seminole, which is just a town south of us, and there was a restaurant that burned down. The irony of that, it was actually my grandmother's restaurant, my mother's restaurant, and it burned down. He was frustrated because it didn't have a fire department. But he didn't sit there and get angry. He took action. So he did the research, got the grants, got the applications, and created Seminole's first fire department. My grandfather was the first fire chief of Seminole. My parents moved down here in the early 60s. My father taught civics, back to being civic oriented and giving back. He taught at that time it was the junior high school. But as a private resident, he was a little frustrated even back in the 60s at overdevelopment, something similar we're seeing today. But again, he took action. Hammock Park was actually in the hands of a local attorney for development, but he did the research, he received a grant, and he gave that money to the city of Dunedin to purchase Hammock Park and make it one of Dunedin's crown jewels of nature today. And as a thank you of that, they awarded my father the position. He was Dunedin's first director of Parks and Recreation. And so that's kind of my background growing up, civics oriented, giving back to the community. I too have a degree in economics. and I've spent 20 years, most of that, in nonprofit or not-for-profit organizations. And from not-for-profit has been banking and finance. Most of it was in credit unions. I ended up being CEO of a financial institution of a credit union in Ocala, Marion County Credit Union. Very rewarding and an exciting time I was CEO. It was Y2K. And the stress of all for naught, or I don't know, did we all live through that? I'm telling you. So just giving back to the community, nonprofit organizations, and for those of you who don't know, with credit unions, they are tax labeled, categorized as not-for-profit financial cooperatives, but they are the same as banks, savings, CDs, car loans, credit cards, mortgages, et cetera, et cetera. They all do the same thing. Back to growing up, my kids born and raised here, they did all the things that youth do. And I was, they played soccer. I was president of Dunedin Sterling Soccer Club. I'm currently on the board of the Dunedin Scottish Arts Foundation. I'm on the board of Friends of the Hammock, and I am on the executive committee of the Dunedin Music Society. My name is Jeff Gow, and I'm running for City of Dunedin Commission seat 4. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Those were good introductions from two great candidates, and I think the city will be blessed to have either one. Going back to the first question, with which I was a bit premature, James Madison, the 4th President of the United States and one of our founding fathers, said that legislators should be citizens, and the legislature ought to be the most exact transcript of the whole society and made from ordinary citizens with ordinary jobs. As I mentioned earlier, that may or may not be working for Dunedin, because the last 10 commission seat elections, 5 have run unopposed. The commissioners and the mayor have said from time to time that being a commissioner is more than a part-time job. So my question is the role of a commissioner still valid as a part-time position, or should it be a full-time position with full-time pay? Mr. Tornga.
And how many minutes do we have for this?
Thank you. We've gone over the rules among the three of us so many times that these people know it better than me. You have a 2-minute answer, and we'll get a 15-second warning. And thank you for being so generous.
Wow, generous. Thank you, Harry. That's great. Just wanted to let you know that that's a question that I actually have really not dealt with. I better move this. Someone move this a little bit, so we'll just adjust this. We have a sound manager. I've really not been asked that question before, but I'd be delighted to give my opinion on that. Yes, we do have a tendency to spend a bunch of time as a city commissioner. Some of that is, of course, because of the assignments that we take, and we really get into those. For example, I serve on the Florida League of Cities on their transportation committee. Now, why do I do that? I do that because I now have been up to Tallahassee. I now have talked to leaders in transportation. Why is that interesting? Well, I'm representing Dunedin. I'm representing Dunedin for quality of life that we want here in Dunedin. I'm there representing Dunedin for, well, what I call complete streets. I want to see multimodal on the streets here. Now, do I need to be a full-time commissioner to do that? I don't think so. The question was asked, the 5 out of 10 ran, and they were not opposed. Well, I ran, and I was not opposed. And why wasn't I opposed? First of all, I was asked by a number of people to run. And why would they ask me to run? Well, I've been the chairman of the Board of Finance. We worked on a number of things in the finance, including our rating within the city, which is now sky high and wonderful, great position. We worked on things such as our reserve and our reserve funds and getting the proper number with that. And so you get tied up in doing some of those things, but it's really not full time. And so they asked me to run. My experience was, as I said before. My knowledge is, as I said before, and my relationships, as I said before. So I guess a lot of people thought, well, we'll just let him be one of the commissioners because he has what we're looking for. And so I can only respond from my standpoint, but thank you very much.
And 15-second warning, please.
You know, this is going to sound hokey, but I really do believe in a government that is of, by, and for the people, and that the people who represent their constituents need to be made up of the face of those constituents. To answer your question directly, Harry, yes, I do believe that it should be a full-time position with full-time benefits. I need to clarify that a little bit, just because of my current situation and the fact that I currently work for the City of Clearwater full-time. If I am blessed enough to win this election, I can no longer work for the City of Clearwater. They said thank you, but no thank you. It's actually, they run by a civil board, and their rules and regulations say that you cannot be a representative of one community and work for them full-time. Several conversations later, and I could not convince them otherwise. So anyway, that's just to clarify that I'll be out of a full-time job. Now, if this is a part-time job, then I have to figure out what I'm going to do. I've talked to my mortgage company, and if y'all are ever down or anything, call your mortgage companies, because they're all for, no, Jeff, you can do this, you can do this. But anyway, I think the commission needs to be made up of every face, every walk of life in the community it represents. And I've been told I've never done an FTE study, so I don't know exactly how many hours are spent weekly, but anybody I've talked to, including city commissioners, I've been told it's a full-time job. And if it's going to be a full-time job, it should be open to everybody, and everybody should be able to run. It shouldn't be just if you're retired. It shouldn't be that if you're a person of means or you have a partner of means. It should be open to everybody, and it should be just a reasonable pay to do the job and represent your community. Thank you.
These are some good answers, and they're very different, coming from very different points of view. And that makes me feel good about my city. I hope it makes you feel good too. All right, question number 2. What are the 3 achievements that you are most proud of, Mr. Tornga, or in your case, Mr. Gao, what are the 3 initiatives that you would want to champion if you are elected? And please provide specifics of what you have initiated or what you will initiate, and some specifics on how you will accomplish what you want to accomplish. And we're going to be alternating the order of the questions and the responses. So, Mr. Gao, you're on.
No pressure here. Actually, one of the things I did achieve, just because I am really proud of it, outside of City Commission, is actually becoming CEO of a financial institution. And the fact that I was able to do that by the age of 38 years old, I think that's pretty impressive, if I can pat myself on the back. The initiatives, or what I want to bring to the commission, is one, to bring back Dunedin's sense of identity. And I think with the current development, I think we are losing that identity. And that we at one time have been voted most charming, and I don't think that we will ever get that designation again. And I plan to do that with managed development that fits into the character and the identity of the community. I think there are several ways that you can maintain economic growth without having all the development. I think we can be a destination city. We can be a destination for the arts. We can be a destination for clean energy. We can be a destination for small business. And support those small businesses. We have a small business incubator, and I think that's fabulous, but I think we can blow that up. We can be that city where people can come to just because they have creative ideas, and that we can do something with that. Our clean energy. There are certainly segments of our society, the younger generation, the millennials, that look for cleaner cities. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting pretty old, and I'm going to need to be replaced. We need that diverse generations within our community. And so those three things are what I hope to bring to the commission, is holding on to our identity, and then the destination cities, and then I was just proud of what I did as a CEO. Thank you.
Sir, would you repeat the questions just for the audience, please? Thank you.
You know, I really should have him as the moderator. He's doing a far better job. Okay, what are 3 achievements that you were most proud of, or in the case of Mr. Gao, the 3 initiatives that you would most like to champion? We'd like some specifics of what you have initiated or what you will initiate, and let us know how you're going to accomplish that.
Thank you very much.
In 2 minutes.
Thank you. This is of course, as I've said before, a wonderful city, and I won't go into all the platitudes about that. This is a city made up of people, and that's the strength of this city. It's not the buildings, the location is not bad, but the people are what makes this city. We have, and notice how I'm going to say we. I'm going to say we a lot. Now I'll give an I at the end if you'd like, but we brought on a new team here into the city, a new city manager who is really doing some incredible work. And that took some desire, that took some work, that took some guts. And meanwhile, we kept everything going. We kept everything going from baseball to, well, I'll skip off of that because we did bring in a new city manager who's really brought some depth and brought some activity within our city. The second thing that we did in conjunction with that city manager is an incredible amount of planning, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But someone talks about planning. We have so many plans, I wouldn't even know what to do with all the plans that we have, but let me just tell you, I'm going to read this to you because here's what we did. We created a City of Dunedin's epic goals. There's 5 of them, and they accomplished these things. As far as us being any town, anywhere, or being like anybody else, I don't think so. This last Saturday, I went from an 8 o'clock, it's called a beer run, runners on the trail, to a 10 o'clock opening at the fire department, to a 3 o'clock scholarship program for the arts, to 5 o'clock judging of 200 golf carts. Here's the goals. Create a vibrant cultural experience that touches the lives of our community and visitors. Create a visual sense of place throughout Dunedin. Promote Dunedin as a premier coastal community, protecting and improving the natural resources for enjoyment of all. And the final 2, be the statewide model for environmental sustainable stewardship, and then enhance community and employee relationship strategies that strengthen inclusive, respectful, transparent, and collaborative engagement. And we have more than 90 initiatives behind that. That's just from this plan. Thank you.
Lots going on. All right. The third question, and by the way, I just want to acknowledge a couple of folks that are here. Commissioner Heather Gracie, thanks for joining us. The president of the Dunedin Downtown Dunedin Merchants Association, Kimberly Platt. Simple question. This one will be short-winded instead of long-winded. What are your political goals? Will you use the Dunedin Commission as a stepping stone to Tallahassee? Are you willing to promise here and now that you will stay in this city? And Mr. Tornga.
Debbie and I moved here in 1989. We moved into our house in 1990. Following another corporation where I became the Vice President of Business Development, a large corporation which was on the moving edge of technology, we came back to Dunedin, and I didn't go back into the corporate world. I started my own business. First month revenue, zero. Expenses, don't want to talk about it. Okay? Why did I do that? Because I wanted to have a successful business that I started, but really the reason is we wanted to stay here in Dunedin. Am I going to stay in Dunedin? Our goal is to stay in Dunedin, period. That's what we came here for. We wanted to be here. We understood Florida. I lived in Fort Lauderdale before this, and before that I lived in Europe, And we came to Florida, and then we found Dunedin and said Dunedin is where we want to be. The question about am I going to be a professor, I don't believe, first of all, that I should be paid to be a full-time commissioner in any shape, manner, or form. I do not intend upon going anywhere to be a full-time politician. I am not a politician. I am your representative to the city of Dunedin and in guiding the city staff. We have a strong city management form of government, and we have 5 of us that represent you, and 5 of us direct the city manager as the CEO as they accomplish the tasks of the city. We are moving forward in a wonderful way, keeping Dunedin quaint, and we're doing it in respect to what Dunedin is. Do I like Dunedin? I think I answered that. Am I going to stay in Dunedin? Yes. Am I going to promise you I'm going to stay in Dunedin? Only the good die young, but when you do, you probably might not stay. But I can't tell you that. I wouldn't know that, but my intent is certainly to stay here. I've not entertained any other situations or considerations, and I just want to serve as your commissioner here.
Great question, Harry. My answer to that is, as John mentioned, I'm not a politician either. He is, regardless of what he says. He's a sitting commissioner. That makes him a politician. I'm not a politician. I hope to be on November 7th, but right now I am not. I'm just a resident. I'm a neighbor. I'm somebody who's frustrated at the current focus and plan for Dunedin. I liked all the plans that John talked about. Wonderful plan with paid parking. We are still amazed at that decision. But I'm a little frustrated with the direction of where the city is going. We talk about being quaint, very charming. We talked about a lot of that with the historic preservation ordinance that we just put out, and the fact that the sense of loss that you feel when we lose one of our historic buildings. Like many of you, I actually feel that sense of loss when a big development goes up and it's a small development next to it, and that type of change. I feel that same sense of loss. We just went through a sign ordinance where they talked about sandwich boards in front of each business, and the charm behind that. They must have used charm 100 times in talking about our sign ordinance. I'm having a hard time wrestling the difference between the charm of the sandwich boards and the big development that we're seeing in our community. Again, I think the development needs to be managed. I think it needs to fit into the character of Dunedin, and that will continue to make Dunedin the charming city that it is. Thank you.
Okay. The Dunedin Mayor and City Commission have noted repeatedly that Tallahassee is trying to strip legislative authority away from cities, and that home rule is in danger. Home rule is what makes cities different. I'd like to ask each of you, what are you doing or what will you do to protect home rule? And can each of you give me 2 examples of what Tallahassee has done to try and strip away home rule? And I'd like you to also each comment on Proposal 95. Jeff, you're first.
Okay, we recently had come before the commission a class action lawsuit that was strictly focused on the penalties around handguns. And I've actually caught a lot of flack on this on Facebook and through email and in some neighborhood meetings. The decision was whether or not the city should join that lawsuit. And the vote was 3-2 to yes to go ahead and join that lawsuit at a upfront cost of possibly $7,500, but the actual price of that could go down. I would have voted yes on that, joining that lawsuit. That has nothing to do with handguns or getting into the controversy over handguns, but it truly was over Dunedin's opportunity for home rule and making our own decisions. That rule, the what that was about, if y'all aren't aware of it, was penalizing the city commissioners for even talking about it, even to the city manager. And the civil penalties and the personal penalties, removing from office, finding them, things of that nature. I think it was great overreach by the city. And so I have a great concern over that, and I think we should protect our home rule. Actually, another place where I'm having a little frustration is over the 5G towers, micro towers that they're building downtown. And the fact that the city has no control over the location of those. And I think that's something that the city should be able to control on where those go and what it does. We have spent millions of dollars in our downtown to try and make it quaint and charming. And now we have to abide by whatever the state wants and just allow them to put it anywhere they want to. And I just think that's a real concern. Over
15 seconds.
And what was the other question?
Proposal 95.
And I'm sorry, I cannot speak to Proposal 95. Thank you.
The question is about home rule. Here's a great one for you for fun. Can you name me what that lawsuit is called? Can anybody here name me what it is called? It is called the Firearm Preemption Protection Litigation. I do not need you to create litigation to protect me from understanding what I've committed to. I have committed as a United States Marine Corps from a United States Marine, until I am dead, to the Constitution of the United States of America, to which it stands, and you know the rest. I do that for the state when I'm sworn in. You're all familiar with interstate and intrastate, and I don't need to try to give a civics lesson here today, but you know what that means. When it's interstate, it connects the states. The federal government usually controls that. You don't want to say Florida says you got to have a green truck, and Georgia says you have to have a red truck, and now how are you going to get across the straight line? And then you have intrastate, and what went to from the Constitution of the United States, what went to the federal government is defined. What did not goes to the state government, and what is not from the state government filters on down to us. Can you just imagine a law officer who serves here in the county of Pinellas with 24 municipalities, having 24 different laws for firearms? Someone said what it was about. I'm not even going to make a comment about that. That's not what it's about. Second of all, the 5G. Yes, we're concerned about that. Heather Gracie is the president of the Suncoast League of Cities, and they're continuing to work on that. We work on home rule. The things that should belong with us, we want to stay with us. And we just want to make sure that Tallahassee is aware of that. And thank you very much.
I mentioned a few things in the question that I want to share with you. And frankly, maybe that was a dirty trick to play on our guests here. But on the other hand, these are things I should have known about, and we all should know about. Some of the things that are happening in Tallahassee to strip legislative authority from the Commission of Dunedin, the biggest one is something called Proposal 95. Now, there is a Constitution Revision Commission, often called the CRC, which every 10 years proposes changes to the Florida Constitution. In 1965, one of those changes was to adopt a rule favoring home rule. Well, Proposal 95 says that no municipality can enact any legislation that would affect commerce, trade, or labor outside of the city's borders. So, for example, and I think I have this right, I've got two commissioners here to correct me if I don't, but if, for example, the city wanted to enact an ordinance that affected the causeway, theoretically, they couldn't do that because Frenchie's has a location in Clearwater, so they would be attempting to regulate something beyond the city's borders. This is a real nasty one, and I hope you all will take some time to look at it. Proposal 95. A couple other things to be aware of in terms of the dynamics between Tallahassee and Dunedin, or Tallahassee and any municipality. One state legislator offered a law that would prohibit municipalities from regulating tree trimming and tree removal. Interestingly enough, this same state legislator had gotten a pretty big fine just before that for clearing some trees off his property without permission. Another regulation or another law that would affect us says that you can't use cameras at red lights. Red light cameras will no longer be allowed by any municipality. Municipality can't regulate plastic bags, vacation rentals, medical marijuana placement, prohibits, the cities are not allowed to prohibit back-in parking in garages. And one of the things that Mr. Tornga, Mr. Gao didn't mention that I'd like to add to it is that the legislators, if they go for regulating gun ownership or use in the city, are liable out of their own pocket. The city cannot protect them. The city attorney cannot help them. This is a big issue, and I urge you, if you're feeling frustrated with national politics, it's a good one to take a look at. All right, let's move on. Mr. Tornga wasn't going to give us a civics lesson. I did. All right. In the 2016 election, many of the candidates referred to transparency. There's not enough transparency. I will give you transparency. What does transparency mean to you? And in what areas does the commission lack transparency? Or what would you propose to make the commission more transparent? Mr. Tornga.
Transparency. We have nothing that is attempting to block any transparency within the city. Pretty much everything gets posted on our social network, and pretty much everything that you wish to see, you can go and see if you wish. You can watch a lot of things on television. You can even watch a lot of our committees on television, such as we do when we don't go to all of the meetings. There is a thing of transparency, and of course we have a sunshine law, and again I swore that I would follow the Florida Constitution, the laws therein. And so we do not talk to each other about anything that may be voted on or that may come up to be voted on or that could possibly be voted on. So it's a pretty boring conversation when you're with us, because we don't even dare talk about something, and we're afraid something might come up about it, and we understand that. It's just a complexity in the business that we deal in, the sunshine law. So we follow that. As far as the transparency goes, if anyone feels there's a lack of transparency, then I would suggest that they look into what it is the subject matter is they wish and give one of us a call. Now, I believe we can always have more transparency, and we have been very supportive of increasing the communication, not only to our boards and committees, but we have a gentleman right back in the back over here who's serving on one of the brand new first time, he's going to be honor graduate of the community, what is that called? Piddler, where's Piddler?
Right here.
Piddler, what is that called?
Called the Citizens Academy.
The Citizens Academy, where we're trying to allow you to see everything that happens in the city and how it happens. That goes right on through where you get the fresh water and where the bad water comes out. And everything in between there. All of our 8 departments and all of the financing that goes behind that. All of the financial records are open at any given point in time, and any thought that we have, we'd be delighted to communicate that with you. So transparency, yes, I am definitely for more town halls. I have asked for town halls on every major decision that we make, and we have had them. town halls on a lot of the major decisions that we've had. If you haven't come to one, you're always invited to come to every town hall that we have. Thank you.
I feel bad for the people on my left. Hey guys, transparency. You know, I'm not really aware of any transparency concerns. Thank you to the Sunshine Law. I think that everything is open to the public, and it's amazing the quick response you get from the city when you do have a question, or at least that's been my history with dealing with the city. What I would like to bring the city as far as increasing that transparency, and John touched on it, was actually increasing the communication. And some of the things that concern me within that communication is just not really knowing what everybody's thinking at the same time. And while John has mentioned that we've had some town halls, I don't know that we have town halls. I think we call them listening sessions. And that's where the commission just kind of sits back. You never hear from them. You never know what they're thinking. And it just really, to me, really creates an uncomfortable feeling. And what I want to do is when issues come up, and actually I won't even wait for an issue. If I'm elected commissioner, I will do my best to hold them quarterly, whether that's just by myself or the rest of the commission and mayor seem to join me. But it's to have that constant interaction with you, not only with upcoming issues, but how we're doing currently. We have seen residents, the only time that they feel that they have any input is during that citizen input session of every commission meeting. And you've heard them scream and holler about paid parking. You've heard them scream and holler about Hammock Park or development. And I think the idea should be to get the residents, the merchants, and the city staff all in the process earlier, holding through a lot of town halls, to where, as a commissioner, you would know what I'm thinking. That doesn't mean the way I'll vote, but we all have ideas. We all have our opinions, but the idea is to share those opinions, share those ideas, and come to conclusion together as a community and move Dunedin forward. So that's all that I have to say about that.
All right, folks, those were the questions that were prepared by Preserve the Vibe. I have some dillies here, okay? So I have a few questions here. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. And we will have closing statements from each candidate. And I have promised Mr. Tornga that he will be out the door by 3 o'clock because he double dated today. All right. Question from one questioner is, it's a softball question, a good one to start with. What is the single most important factor affecting the quality of life in Dunedin? How will you address or promote that? Jeff, 1 minute.
The single most important issue is the residents and bringing into them process earlier. I'm concerned about the identity of the city and the fact that we might be losing that through development, but it's only through your voice that we can correct that. By your vote on November 6th, get involved, and that's the way that we can help change the path of Dunedin. Thank you.
Please do not wait until November 6th. We have a workshop coming up next week. We had a workshop that just occurred last week. That's where we let you know how we're feeling. That's where we can talk in the sunshine. And that's where you can come and talk to us and tell us, whoa, I'm not sure I think that that umbrella ought to be blue or ought to be white. I may have said it's red and someone else, another commissioner may have said it was going to be another color. That is where we talk about that. You have ample opportunity to do that. You have had that for a long time. So we have that. As far as
How will you address or promote what is the most important?
I'm gonna talk about that in that same context, if you don't mind. Transparency, that opportunity to give that information. We go out and seek that. We did the planning for the penny money, and I think there were probably 10 people in there. And we even called around and told some people that we were having that. This is a tough thing. You've got lots of things to do in your life. We're your representatives. We will represent you, but we do like to hear from you to see what it is that you want us to be doing off into the future. And so we will continue to do that. Thank you.
All right. The next question couldn't be more ironically timely. What is your position on the 3-minute limit for citizen input at city commission meetings?
Oh, good. Oh, that's good, Eric.
This has special meaning to me.
Oh, gosh.
And before we go into this, one thing I do want to mention is we have had any number of commission meetings that have gone to midnight, 1, 2, 3 in the morning. I did a little looking and can tell you that the amount of citizen input was not disproportionate to the length of the program. I will be particularly sensitive to anyone that says that citizen input impedes good government. So the question again is, what is your position on the 3-minute limit for citizen input at city commission meetings? Mr. Tornga.
Be delighted to answer that question, and I'll answer where that question came from, the exact evening that that question came from. And that meeting went until, if I recall, till 2:30 in the morning. And that's when I made a statement, and I'll just be very honest and open about that. Just to bring it right out in the open, transparency. What I said at that point in time, we are here to conduct the residents and stakeholders, our community business. We have an agenda. There's items on that agenda. I sat in my position looking out at the audience, and there were 3 engineers from the county, highly paid individuals, 2 from engineering companies, asleep on the back wall that had been there since 6 o'clock in the evening to hear their issue that was coming up before them. So I said, I'll sit here all night and listen to you, but let's cut this back a little bit. Let's conduct our business, and I'll stay here all night, all morning, and listen. I'd love to listen. 3 minutes is often enough time to convey what it is that you wish. Come back and do it again if you'd like. I'll do it at the end of the meeting after the agenda's been taken care of. Thank you.
As your commissioner on November 7th, I will never, ever, ever, ever be embarrassed to hear from the citizens of Dunedin. We heard that night, how embarrassed he was that we had officials from another community. I was actually very proud how we conducted our business and that we actually had the opportunity to reflect that and be a positive light on how that should be reflected in all communities across the state. So it's wonderful. I'm a fan of 3 minutes. I also believe that when the crowd is down and it's just 1 or 2 people in the audience, if you want to exceed those 3 minutes and just talk, I think we should be open to that as well. It shouldn't be 3 minutes anytime there's the city is conducting business. So I'm very proud of the residents that speak up, and thank you very much.
I have a follow-up question, and I only got 4 questions from the audience. 1 had already been answered during the course of the conversation. So my follow-up question to you is, Mr. Tornga, you referred to stakeholders and residents, and I have heard that terminology for quite some time, stakeholders and residents. What exactly is a stakeholder, and how is that different from a resident? Should there be a difference to the city between whatever a stakeholder is